Hi, welcome to the workshop. My name is Eric Poulin. Among other things, I've been a Sunday school teacher, a young men's president, a stake young men's president, and a bishop. In my career, I'm a web developer and social media expert. And that means that I spend a lot of time helping business owners understand how they can use the internet to try and promote their products and services. There's a lot of that out there. So you need to be careful that people promoting things that don't match your standards don't reach you. If we take a look at this image on the screen here, what you're looking at is a map of the social interconnectedness of the Facebook network all over the globe. You can see from the white parts where most of the active places are, and I'm sure you'll notice that we are in a hotspot. Now, just to get an idea of how many of you are online actively, let's take a quick poll. How many of you, leaders included, actively use Facebook? Probably all of you, or maybe a few not. How about Twitter? A little bit less, I expect. Tumblr? A bit less. How many of you write a blog? Or how many of you read blogs? How many of you watch videos on YouTube? I suspect that's going to be everybody. What about searching for things on Google? Again, I suspect that's everybody. And how many of you do these things from a mobile device, like a phone, smartphone, or iPod? So how many are on one of those social networks every single day? Probably a lot of you. And how many of you would say that you're addicted to social media? Now, when I say addicted, I mean like when you get up in the morning, you feel an urge to go check Facebook. Probably a lot of you. I know I fall into that category. It's interesting to note that Facebook has really only been around for about 7 years. And already, I mean, look around, almost everybody is addicted to it. And who knows what the next 10 years are going to bring. So it's important that we kind of get on board, understand how we can use social media as a force of good. So how many of you would agree that social media has brought people closer together? I think most of you would agree that it has. Grandparents and parents are using it to connect with people in distant locations. Friends are more connected than they ever have been at an instant's notice. But let me ask this also. In what ways has social media driven people further apart? Now, in my opinion, social media can drive people apart given certain conditions. I'm sure you've all seen people who have kind of online Facebook arguments. Back before Facebook was around, before social networks existed really, when people got angry at each other, they'd kind of walk away and then calm down, cool down in their homes. But now, you get angry and then you post about why you're angry with this person, and like seconds later, you're kind of releasing. You don't have that cool down period. And so, because people have kind of a more clear window into the way we think, even when we're hot and angry, sometimes it can drive us further apart as well. Now, social media or social networks are based on the idea that people are inherently an interconnected people who seek out relationships with each other. Now, in computer science, we refer to this interconnectedness between people and relationships as the social graph. It maps the way people are connected together. In fact, the website LinkedIn, I'm sure you've heard of, is based on this social graph. It's designed for business professionals who maybe, for example, I want to connect with the president of some company. So I'll search them up on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is going to show me, based on their connections in the social network and my connections in the social network, what is the shortest path or the shortest social graph between me and the person I'm looking for. So that way I can request an introduction. So for example, if I know person A knows person B, and then person B knows the president of the company I want to find, I can request an introduction through that chain, and because I would have an introduction from a known colleague or social network person, it's going to be a lot more profitable for me because my email is more likely to get to the person instead of just going into their trash can. Now, interestingly, you may have heard about this before. There was a famous study done years ago that tried to link the actor Kevin Bacon to all other known actors by tracking the movies in which they acted together. So, for example, if we try to link Kevin Bacon to, say, Beyonce, we would find that Beyonce has a Bacon number of 2. So let's have a quick look at what that looks like. Okay, so I'm just typing Beyonce's name here, and it shows me that she has a Bacon number of 2. So what does this mean? It means that there's 2 movies between Kevin Bacon and Beyonce. So Kevin Bacon acted in the movie R.I.P.D., Ripped, with an actor named David Boston, and David Boston was in the movie The Pink Panther, and Beyonce was in that. So between them, there's 2 movies. So that's the Kevin Bacon, or the Bacon number 2. The idea is that, on average, any 2 people in the world, on the whole Earth, can be linked to another random person on the Earth in 6 links or less. Now, this study has been run several times, not just with actors, but in random people through chainmail, just through experimentation. And it always turns out that the average number of links between any 2 random people comes out to around 6. In fact, as the world has become more connected, recent studies trying to prove this 6 degrees of separation theory have shown even lower numbers, like 5.2 and such. So I thought it would be interesting if we tried to figure out what people's YLC number is, their Youth Leadership Conference number. What we're going to do is we're going to try and prove out this 6 degrees of separation. So it'll just be a sample, since in the workshop we don't have the entire conference here. But we'll give it a try, and because we're not exactly a random sampling, I mean, we're all members of the church attending leadership, there's a higher probability that we're going to know each other anyway. So, in the workshop, what I did is, you'll remember I picked 2 kind of random people that don't really know each other, got them to introduce themselves and figured out what their stakes were. Then I asked if there's anybody in the room that knows both of them. Now, depending on the crowd that was there, there may have been somebody that knows both of them, and that would mean they have a YLC number of 1. If it just happens that the random people I pick know each other already, then they have a YLC number of 0, because they know each other. Now, in a few cases, we probably will have found that it took 2 or 3 links. So maybe we had to find out all the people that know person 1, and then of those people that know person 1, how many of them know somebody in the stake of person 2. And maybe there's a YLC number of 2 in that case. In any case, finding out your YLC number is an interesting game to play, especially if you're trying to meet somebody of the opposite gender. You find somebody that you want to meet, you walk up to them and say, "Hey, my name's so-and-so, want to figure out our YLC number?" It's a great icebreaker because you can always start a conversation by trying to find out what you have in common. And in this case, what you're trying to find out is what friends you have in common or relationships you have in common. Now, our personal interconnectedness is extremely dense. We have relationships that are deep and complicated. Some of the people that we know are close friends, some are acquaintances, and surprisingly, some of the people that we know, we have only an online relationship with. People that we've actually maybe never even met before or only interact with online. Now, I'm sure there's some of you who have that, or many of you who have people on your friend list in Facebook who you've probably never even met, perhaps from a different country or a different culture or whatever. This image that you're looking at is an image from an app called TouchGraph, which is pretty neat. So I'm going to open that up and just show you how you can use this if you want to explore your own personal network and see how it looks. So what you do is you just go to Facebook and do a search for the app, which is TouchGraph. And I'm going to skip the permission because I don't want it blasting all my friends. Now what this is doing is it's loading all of the friendships and relationships that I have identified in Facebook. And it's going to load every single one, so I can now explore the relationships that I have with people. And what this thing does is interesting. It kind of clusters the groups of people together according to groups. So it's smart enough to figure out that, for example, I have people that are members of the church that, a lot of them know each other. And I have people that I used to teach at Durham College that know each other. I have people that are from the same city that I live in. Okay, so it's kind of sorting itself out here, and it's only showing 100 friends right now. I'm going to just boost it up to show everybody. I'll just make some adjustments here. So if you can see, I am over here. I'm just going to zoom in because it's so difficult to see because there's so many relationships. Many of you will have even more than me because you're probably more popular than I am. So there I am, and you can see just the density of these lines that are showing here. Let me just see if I can zoom in even further here. Just so many interconnected lines of people that know each other. All of these people are on my list, but they know each other as well, many of them. And it's just interesting to note how dense our social networks really are. And only recently, in the past decade, have we really been able to map this well because of social networks like Facebook. It just goes to show that we have incredible influence. Just imagine all these people that you are able to influence by who you are. It's crazy to think about how much influence you actually can have. And you can have influence for good or for bad. And that's what we really want to talk about today. So, next thing I want to ask is, what do you think is the significance of this number? This number happens to be the number of minutes that we have in every single day. So the question is then, how much time do we spend online? Online including browsing the internet, doing research, reading blogs, watching videos, checking mail, updating social media, looking at other people's profiles. What do you think? How many minutes a day or a week would we use? Now, for you, it's going to be quite a bit because, let's face it, you're youth and you're into the technology more than a lot of the older generation. But if we take a look at some of the stats for internet usage in Canada, what you're going to find is it's insane how much we are online as a country. And you guys, of course, are skewing that average to be higher than it would normally be. So that means these stats that you're seeing are the average, but your usage will be much higher than what I'm talking about right here on this infographic. So 80% of all Canadians are online. That's, more than 30 million people, 80% of all those people. And how many hours online per week? 17.2 hours every week online. That is a lot of time. That's almost an entire day. That's 1 out of 7 days almost used just being online. Now, some of that online is people working. Some of it's productive use of time. But I wonder how much of us are kind of wasting time online. And although it's not included in this infographic, I would add in there video games for perhaps you young men who are big gamers. How much time are you spending on gaming? Elder Bednar, in 2010, which is the same year these statistics came out, said, "Be aware of how much time you and your family spend on social media sites, participating in activities such as playing games, posting meaningless updates, or holding inappropriate conversations. If you're not careful, it's easy to spend too much time on these sites, causing other important aspects of life to be ignored. If needed, consider setting time limits as part of your family's internet usage standards. Be sure that you are not damaging authentic relationships by obsessing over contrived ones." Powerful words by the apostle, and very pertinent. For example, I'm developing a digital sacrament meeting program that you can use your mobile device rather than the paper program you get on Sundays. So in many ways it's more convenient since the hymns and lessons are all hyperlinked. But just last week, someone, an older adult as it happened to be, said he was not in favor of it. He says this in front of everybody, right? I'm not in favor of that. He was concerned about people staring down at their screens and then getting sucked into email and games and social media. And I totally understand this concern. I mean, who hasn't been guilty of jumping on Facebook during church at some point if you have a mobile device? I mean, I certainly have. Hopefully you guys haven't. But it's something that you need to have self-control about. There certainly are inappropriate times to be using your digital devices. So just by show of hands, or by maybe some answers, what are some of the inappropriate times to use your digital devices? Right, obviously we're going to get the answers like sacrament meeting, classes, anytime you should be paying attention to a speaker or to somebody else or to the situation. Really, it's not appropriate. Now, let me ask you this. How many of you feel that it's inappropriate when you're talking with somebody else and they break your eye contact and start checking their mobile device? You know, they're checking their email or Facebook or whatever, especially if they start typing. Right? Do you feel that they're present in that conversation? Do you feel like they are making you matter? Remember, the whole concept behind a social network and behind social media is to bring people closer together. And when it happens that you are physically closer together with somebody, as in you're in their face talking to them, probably a good idea to give them your attention, to be present with them, and to give them the attention that they deserve. I remember a lot of people who have gone to speak to the prophet have commented on how present he is, meaning that when you're speaking to the prophet, it's like you're the only person in the world. And he is a busy guy, of course. He's got meetings to go to. He's got a whole world to be worried about. But it's the one-on-one that counts, and that's where relationships are built, one-on-one. So be sure that you're not spending too much time online, and when you are spending time online, make sure that it's inappropriate times. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this question. Is it okay to be different online than you are in person? What do you think about that? Probably some of the answers that we got in the workshop would surround that it's not okay. You should be not hypocritical and be one way in person and then online be totally different. But I think some of you are going to say that it's maybe not that bad. So the discussion, from my point of view anyway, is I would ask this. I don't know if it's hypocritical to be one way online and different in person, any more than it is to be different one way at school and another way at church. Right? You're really hanging out with different people, and it's not just the different people, it's the different environment. We as a people tend to behave differently in different situations in life, different environments. However, having said that, our actions and the way we behave are always subject to scrutiny in any place that we are. And people will notice wild swings in our character and personality. Now, speaking about changes in personality, let me share a quick story, an experience that I had about 6 months ago based on my online behavior. So about 6 months ago, now keep in mind the backstory to this is I'm a web developer, I work for myself, and during the summer it's just crazy busy. It's not even in the summer. This was even before the summer. I have 5 kids. It's a loud house. And I end up working late at night, almost all the time, just so that I can have access to a quiet house and I can think clearly when there's not constant interruptions. Daddy, can I do this? And so forth. So I end up working till 3, 4, 5 in the morning pretty regularly. Thankfully, my wife gets up with the kids and I stay up later with them. So that's the backstory. Now, one night I had taken a day off work and we spent some time with the kids. During the day, we were exhausted and we decided to go to bed early that night. So we went to bed really early, like 9 o'clock or something like that. Now, my parents are down in Arizona, and they were trying to reach me for whatever reason. They couldn't reach me, and they couldn't reach me online. They tried Skype, they tried Facebook, they tried a bunch of different online networks, and I wasn't online anywhere. And they thought this was really bizarre because he's always online. Now, they even tried to phone the house, and we didn't pick up the phone because, well, we had the phones in another room. We didn't have any in the bedroom where we were sleeping that day. We just had left them in the other room, I guess. And I had a fan on, so for all intents and purposes, we had created a soundproof room. So we went to sleep exhausted, didn't tell anybody. And my parents start freaking out. They can't get a hold of us. They can't phone us. They can't contact us. So they call the police, right? Because they're worried that something's happened to us. It's not my behavior to be offline. And so they call the police. They send the police over. They're pounding on the door, and we're not hearing it because we're in this soundproof bedroom. Our kids are all in the basement. Nobody hears. They're banging. The police go around to the back, right? They're peering in the window with flashlights. And it just so happens that night that we had left our back sliding door open. So the police, they slide in. And they're scoping out the house, right? There's like 6 of them, 5 of them, walking around the house with flashlights, checking to see if we've been, murdered or something. So they're walking around checking things out. They go down to the basement. They see all the kids there. They come upstairs. They knock on my bedroom door. We were sleeping through all of this. They knock on the bedroom door, right, in the middle of the night. I don't think anything of it because my youngest daughter comes in with bad dreams every once in a while, so no big deal. Until this gigantic shadowy form enters the room with a flashlight shining it at us, right? And he says, "Is everything okay in here?" Right? And we're not expecting this at all, right? So we're freaking out. We sit up in our bed and are just like dumbfounded out of a stupor of dreaming and can't believe the situation. And the officer says, "Your parents have been trying to reach you. You should call them." And then he leaves and goes back down the hallway downstairs. And I'm just sitting up in bed with my jaw dropped open like I'm an idiot and just shocked, And all of this because we broke our behavior of our online usage and people got worried about that. So in the end, yes, maybe they overreacted. Maybe I should have said something that I'm going to be going to bed early or whatever. Anyway, in the end, that all worked out, and there was no bad feelings to anybody. But it's just interesting to note that people do recognize your online habits and behaviors, and they make some decisions based on how you act. And when you have a wild swing in how you behave, sometimes people will take notice. Now, sometimes that's a good thing. This could have been a good thing if there actually was something wrong in my little police story there. But it's not always going to be that way. Now, because I have dealt with youth for most of my adult church life, I have a number of youth as friends on Facebook. And I remember a few years ago, a dear young woman who I was shocked to see using profanity on her Facebook posts. Now, I knew that she would never have done that in person. She would never speak that way. It's important that we don't get complacent with our standards. You know that booklet for the Strength of Youth? That booklet outlines the standards. You know this. You've seen it a million times. But it is not just for the way that you speak. It's for the way you type as well. Because that is a reflection of who you are. And people are going to judge you based on the things that you quote-unquote say. And the things you type are counted amongst those things. Now, it's important that you not only control the way you behave, the things that you type, the things that you communicate, but online, it's easy for us to like things by clicking the like button on images or quotes or whatever, some things that other people say. People are going to judge us also on the things that we like. Now, what about liking things that have maybe profanity in it or are just inappropriate? Right? People are going to look at that and say, I thought she was a member of the church, or I thought she was a Christian, or I thought she or he didn't do those kinds of things. And when we like that kind of thing, it's almost as if we're endorsing it or saying it's okay, I enjoy that. It's like saying I enjoy profanity or I enjoy rude pictures or rude sayings. So be careful about what you like and don't like, because it's not just a throwaway thing, all right? It actually matters, and people pay attention to that. I know I do. Also, you need to be careful when you're sharing things online. You may find a picture that is totally appropriate, but is being shared by a page that has profanity in the name or something inappropriate in the name of the page. And if you share that totally clean, nice image, on your timeline now it says, so-and-so shared an image from bang, and it lists that page. So even if the image is good, you have to be careful about the source too, because you don't want people looking at your timeline saying, so-and-so shared an image from profanity, 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 because again, it's as if they're thinking, oh, he or she follows this page, that seems inappropriate, right? We got to be aware of the appearance of evil, even if that is not our intent. Okay, so taking a look at this image, I'm sure you guys have heard that employers are now checking your social media to see what you're like as a job candidate before they hire you. So people, if you're trying to get a job, when you go to excuse me, an interview, your resume is clean and professional looking. You're dressed clean and neat and appropriate, and you're putting on your best self, your best foot forward, and you're looking as nice as you can. But employers don't want to see how you are only in an interview. Anybody can be a different person for 30 minutes, 20 minutes for an interview. But what are you like as a real person? And this is what they can find out from social media, where the guard is down and they can see what you're like amongst your friends and peers. So if they go to your Facebook profile and find that you are bad-mouthing your current employer or past employer, are they likely to hire you? Probably not. What if they see you being overly aggressive online, using profanity or just being overly aggressive to people? Right? They probably didn't see that in the interview. But if they see that online, they're going to judge based on that. Are you the type of person that they want to have working for them? So again, it's important to just be aware that your online profile is not just for your friends. Anybody can come and look at it. Now, of course, there's privacy settings and so forth, but at the end of the day, nobody is too careful. Right? Nobody's careful enough. So remember that social media is not a public forum. Posts are not private, and they should not be used to share confidential or delicate information. There's a an awful lot of information that people can gather about you just from a click. So if we take a look, again, I'm going to go back to the browser here. There's this website called Wolfram Alpha, which is a pretty cool site. So I'm just going to their main page and just searching for Facebook. And if I scroll down a tiny bit, it has an Analyze My Facebook Data button. When I click this, what it's going to do is it's going to my Facebook profile. I gave it permission already. And it's just downloading everything that it can think of about who I am. My friends, where I live, when I post, what I post about, the most popular things that I do, and so forth. And this is all available at the click of a button. Now, as it turns out, in this case, it's only my personal information that I can see. I can't see anybody else's. But it is very easy to get somebody else's information if you're using an app. That app can see an awful lot of data about you. So if we scroll down here, it's just loading up still. There we go. So it sees how old I am, when my birthday is, where I live. Check this out. It shows what kind of things I post, videos, images, text posts. It sees when I post those things. So again, you can see I'm pretty active in the early mornings. That's just because of my job. But if an employer takes a look at this, and they can glean most of this information without this tool just by looking at your profile. If they see that you're online late, are they going to be concerned that you're maybe going to have a hard time getting in on time in the morning for a job? Lots and lots of information available here. This is just a word cloud about the things that are found interesting. Your most common post, your most commented on post, so they can get an idea of how well liked you are. Tons and tons of information. It's very interesting to look at, because the first time I looked at that, it was kind of an eye-opener for me. When I looked at it, I thought, wow, I really do this much online. You don't think about it because, as you're just going through your day, you're just kind of doing your life. But when you look at it in a study report, this shows where all my friends are. So again, and you're probably similar to me. You have friends all over the earth. Anyway, really interesting report here. And again, this information is available to people who want to find it. Now, I don't know about you, but sure, there's a ton of information out there, but how many of you are planning to stop using the internet because there's some bad information around because it might get you in trouble? Right? Nobody's going to be doing that. So it's important that we avoid the bad and try to seek out and promote the good. So, avoiding the bad. This stuff's easy, and again, I don't want to dwell on this too often or too much, so we'll just kind of go over some points here. It's important that we keep open communication with family members regarding our use and their use of social media, right? Spouses and parents and children who participate in social media should all be connected and should be willing to show other family members anything that they post, including the images, right? And we can support each other as family members and friends by keeping the standards. We should be aware of the security settings. I'm sure you've all seen these awful posts going around Facebook about, please remove me because of this and this security, blah, blah, blah. Most of it just drives me nuts. But you should be aware of what the security settings are so that you're comfortable with what is being shared. Now, also something that's interesting is a lot of these social media sites and the internet in general have a high risk of drive-by exposure to content that might not meet your standards. So this might be in the form of advertisements, just accidental things. If you're looking up a word that means what you're looking for, but it also means something else inappropriate, it's easy to just come across these things. So it's important that you have proper filters on your computer. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Also, it's being said that there's no delete button on the internet. Right? Once you post something, images and text can remain for years, and those things can be detrimental when you go searching for a job later on, or maybe when you go searching for admission to college. There may be other times when your public internet record might be reviewed. In fact, this slide is called Avoid the Bad, Protect Yourself. I had originally labeled this slide, What Will the Heavenly Computers Find on Your Facebook Profile? Right? We all assume that come Judgment Day we're going to be judged based on some kind of verbal interview, but I'm guessing that the angels have some pretty good computers, and they have some pretty good hackers up there who can find your entire profile. And they might question you about certain things that you posted and commented on and the way you behaved online. We need to ensure that the way that we communicate aligns with our commitment to take upon ourselves the name of the Savior. So also some applications and games, as I mentioned before, can gain access to your private and personal information. So when you go to use an app for the first time, it always asks you for permission. Take a moment and actually read those things, because they can get access to a lot of information very easily if you give permission carelessly. And that information can be used for identity theft. They can even use it to steal money from you, or even worse, to damage your character. I guess in conclusion about protecting yourself, you just need to always be an example of a follower of Christ in your interactions with others, especially in social media. Your influence, the way that you are, can influence others negatively or positively. And it's just important that we never give people the impression that we are not followers of Christ. Being a follower of Christ is not a part-time job. It's a full-time life commitment. And we need to stand in holy places. And when we don't get to choose where we stand, we need to make the place that we stand holy. Now again, I don't want to turn this into a tech talk by getting too technical, but there are some filters that you can use. There's a filter called OpenDNS, which you can easily install on your router, so it protects every internet device in your house. It basically just, if you try to go to any inappropriate site, it just won't let you. And there's also a way to do it with Google, so let's just have a quick look at what that looks like. So if I go to Google and I'll search for something inappropriate, we'll keep it light inappropriate. Let's search how to make a bomb. Okay, so how to make a bomb from household items. That sounds good. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry, that's blocked. Okay, so this is OpenDNS that's blocked this for me. Okay, so it's just very handy. It requires very minimal setup. It's totally free. And again, it will protect your entire house. You don't have to do something on every computer. Very nice. Also, what you should have is this thing called Google Safe Search. Whenever you do a search, if you look over to the right-hand side, just below your name if you're signed in, it will say something like Safe Search is on or locked. What you want to do is you always want to have it locked. Okay, so you just click on here and you can see the settings. You just want to make sure that it's on and locked. And what that means is that anything that's explicit, sexually explicit content is just going to be filtered right out, because we all know that the internet is just littered with tons of inappropriate material. And this is just going to keep it right out of your searches. So if you're searching for a word that has double meaning, you're not going to get the inappropriate meaning results showing up in your search. And locking it just means that you have to think twice before you turn it off. Okay? And you shouldn't turn it off, because there's never a case where you need access to inappropriate material. Okay. Now again, I don't want this to become a tech talk or a downer talk, but again, if any of you are struggling with pornography or inappropriate internet use, talk with your parents or your bishop. They're not going to freak out on you. They want to help you be awesome. And you cannot be awesome if you have problems with those things. So far we've talked mostly about avoiding the bad online behavior, but avoiding bad behavior doesn't exactly make you stand in holy places, does it? We need to not only avoid the bad, we need to exemplify the good. So 2 months ago, on June 23rd, the leaders of the church held a special training meeting where they announced some very interesting changes in how missionaries do their work. I put together a summary of these changes. The video is only 3.5 minutes long, so pay attention.
In just a few days, the missionaries seated behind you will be sent to the wards and the stakes. As the number of missionaries continues to increase, we have asked, what will these missionaries do? Our answer is, they will be doing the same things that missionaries have always done. They will follow our Savior Jesus Christ and preach His restored gospel. The message they will share is that of the atonement of Christ, the Book of Mormon, and living prophets. Is the same message I shared as a young missionary in the Northern States Mission. However, some of the ways in which we shared the message in that is vastly different than the way you will share it. When I was a young missionary, we were able to speak with contacts on the street, knock on doors to share the gospel. The world has changed since that time. Now many people are involved in the busyness of their lives. They hurry here and there, and they are often less willing to allow complete strangers to enter their homes, uninvited, to share a message of the restored gospel. Their main points of contact with others, even with close friends, is often via the internet. The very nature of missionary work, therefore, must change if the Lord is to accomplish His work of gathering Israel from the four corners of the earth. The missionaries are now authorized to use internet in their proselyting efforts. During less productive times of the day, chiefly in the mornings, missionaries will use computers in meeting houses and other church facilities to contact investigators and members, work with local priesthood leaders and mission leaders, receive and contact referrals, follow up on commitments, confirm appointments, teach the principles from Preach My Gospel using Mormon.org, Facebook, blogs, email, and text messages. Access to the internet by missionaries and the use of digital devices will be phased over several months and into the next year. We will be in touch with you when it is time for your mission and area to use these tools. As missionaries enter this new age where they will use computers in the work of the Lord, we invite the young and the old, the adults, the young adults, the youth, and the children everywhere to join with us in this exciting new work to become Facebook friends with and in addition to the missionaries in your area and on your own computers, and share their gospel message online and become involved in missionary work themselves.
Okay, so some of you are getting ready to serve missions pretty soon. Who's excited about these changes? Right? I was super excited when these things were being announced, right? I was in this meeting, and this is done by satellite, of course. I was grinning ear to ear when Elder Perry was announcing this. I was looking around, you know, like for somebody else to join the excitement. Of course, they're all old people, and they're just sitting there normally. But you guys, I'm sure, are super excited about this because finally, well, not finally, I should say, progressively the church has been getting on board with social media and the digital age. And in fact, not finally, but the church has been very progressive in how it's chosen to reach out and adapt missionary work, adapt the tools that we have available to us. The church has an amazing YouTube channel, and you've probably noticed that all the apostles have their own Facebook profiles now. But church leadership has encouraged not only members and missionaries, but everybody to use social media to spread the good word. Now, the theme of the conference is Stand Ye in Holy Places, right? So, that's applicable especially since today the way that we do that is to make the places that we stand holy. Now, we know the internet and social media are fraught with dangers and bad things, but there is also good. Now, let's talk about some of the ways that we can make the places that we stand online holy. How can we use social media as a force for good? What are your thoughts? Right, some of the ideas that would have come out will be using social media to enhance and deepen relationships that we have with people, to express our faith and testimony of the Savior. Now, we're not always going to do that, hardcore, like bearing your testimony online. Maybe that's just not your style. I know that's not my style. People would think I'm a weirdo if I did that. But maybe that is you, and maybe that's totally cool for you. For me, though, I find other ways to do it. Here's what I do. I befriend people who might be struggling or who are less active in my ward and stake. And when I do that online, I can develop relationships that may open doors to reactivation. It may open doors to be able to be an influence and an inspiration to those people. I follow the various church pages. When announcements are made, I'm one of the first people that finds out about them. And, as we all know how social networks work, when you like something, it shows up in your friends' profiles. In my case, my name's Eric, so when I like something, in my friends' timeline, they're going to see Eric just liked the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Or Eric just liked this video from one of the apostles. And it's an opportunity for people to be able to explore our faith. And at the end of the day, our faith is one of the most important things in all of our lives. We need to remember to be civil with our interactions with people, right? Treat people with respect. Express our feelings about what's going on at church. Now, again, you don't need to be hardcore bearing your testimony online, although that's totally fine. But what I do instead is I use this technique called bumping people, which is basically just I would comment on what happened at church. I'll say something like, so-and-so gave a great talk today on faith, or really enjoyed the youth activity tonight. And so every once in a while, I'll even throw in some church jargon or acronyms, right? So I might post later today, YLC was amazing. And for sure, some of my non-member friends are going to ask me, what is YLC? And that gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit more about it, right? They show a little bit of interest, and then there's your opportunity to express your faith and devotion. Again, we're not trying to trick people into learning about the gospel, but by showing how big a part the gospel is of our lives, by mentioning the spiritual aspect of our life on our social media, that will just naturally pique people's interest, because people are interested in what makes you the way you are. At the end of the day, you are a peculiar people. You're amazing, and you stand out because you're amazing. And let yourself be amazing online. What I like to do is, again, just share these things with people, and I know that as you share your good things that are happening to you online, you'll have opportunities to to share the gospel with others and to be an influence for good wherever you go, to anyone in the world. And I share that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.